Yeah. Yeah. Hey everybody, how's it going? Ryan the Mighty Quinn here, the cornerman underscore MMA, with a guest that I love having on. I love picking the brain of one of the legends, Big John McCarthy. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, but don't pick too much. There's not much left.
Okay, no problem. Then we'll stick to the basics. So John, we were talking before. We've spoken a lot in the past. This channel right now is the project, so to speak, is the discussion of mixed martial arts scoring. Myself, I've been critical, I've defended, I've discussed, debated, but you know what? I really need to have a conversation with somebody that was there at the beginning, like you, and like just so I have a bunch of questions that I think we all have questions. I think you can answer a lot of them. Maybe you can't answer some, but we'll see. So the first question I have is, and now a lot of these questions, one's going to roll into the other, but what forced mixed martial arts to come to the scoring criteria that we have right now? Aside from, it sounds like an obvious question, but it's really not. So like, what forced the change, so to speak, that said we got to put something in place?
Well, let me go even further back to start off to give
Perfect.
you an idea.
Yeah.
Because look, the very first time that we decided, all right, we've got to have judging, was you had UFC had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 without any judging. And then they were going to put together this tournament that was going to be called the Ultimate.
Yep.
And it was, I went to him and I said, look, you now have time limits. You're going to end up having your alternates be the people that are going to move forward, because you're going to have two people that can't finish each other. And so you have no winner. You're going to have to put the alternate forward, or you're going to have judging. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, So we came up with, okay, there would be 3 judges, and they would just decide who they believed was the winner of the fight. There was no point system. There was nothing. They actually held up a card. If you go back, and they wrote the name of who they thought was the winner, and they would hold up the card. Then it got so sophisticated that they actually gave them printed cards later on, so it looked better because people couldn't write. But that was really, where judging started in MMA. Now, the people that were brought in to do the judging, look, people are going to sit there and say, well, what were the qualifications? Look, there weren't qualifications for much as far as referees, fighters, anything back then, and their qualifications were not great either. So that's where judging in MMA really started to come into play. Then, and you got to go see, there was, differences in time lengths of fights. We had fights, in the beginning, there were obviously no time limits. Then there were time limits. Then it was, we're going to do a 15-minute fight with 2 3-minute overtimes. And people don't remember these things that were going on, but all of these things were happening and going on. And that was basically, part of that was to try to help the judges in saying who won the fight, with those overtimes and stuff. And it was also to give the fighters the opportunity to possibly finish the fight themselves.
Right.
But when it finally got to the point of, we went to rounds, and we went to 5-minute rounds, 3 for a normal fight, 5 at the time for a championship fight. So if you had a championship fight, you had 5 5-minute rounds you had to fight. If you had a regulation fight, obviously 3 5-minute rounds you had to fight. And then it was, well, we've got to do some type of, scoring system for it. And it was really the athletic commissions are the ones that decided, hey, we want it to be the same as boxing. And it really was, that was as simple as it gets. They looked at it and said, this is what works for us now. We don't want to try to implement something completely new and have to train people completely new into this system. So we want it to be a 10-9 system. And that's really what it ended up being, was the 10-9, 10-8, 10-7 system from boxing. But the biggest problem that you have with it is we don't have 10, we don't have 8 rounds, 10 rounds, 12 rounds. We had 3 and 5. And
right. Yeah.
Those rounds are a lot more, important when you have fewer of them, as far as damage that one bad score could do for you in that. But that's really how it started. Then when it got to the unified rules, we went into, all right, what was the criteria behind it completely as far as, what was the judge supposed to be looking at? But the 10-9 system that came from boxing was still the system that was used for MMA.
Great. Okay, so I was half right about that. I figured that the 10-9 was what commissions associated with boxing, and it just made. I thought that it was more encouraged to be a 10-9 to make it relative to everybody, but that makes sense. That totally makes sense. So thank you for the history on that. That was big. A lot of that I didn't know. I mean, I knew about the 15 minutes and then the 2 3 minute overtimes, but actually you made me think of one question. So around what UFC ish was when they decided to put a scoring system in play? Because I'm thinking of a few fights that I was like, man, you know what? Like that looks a little like topsy turvy. One fight that comes to mind is Boss Rutten versus Kevin Randleman. It's whoever won, but that's a fight that's topic for discussion. Was there unified rules in play for that fight?
No, there was no unified rules at the
Okay.
time. That was UFC 20.
Yeah.
And the unified rules really came into play.
Oh, right. Rounds. Duh. Yeah. Sorry.
But there were rounds
Mhm.
for the Boss Rutten Kevin Randleman fight.
Uh-huh.
But that was UFC 20, and the rounds were different back then comparatively. The ones that where you really saw the 5-minute round and everything, go back to UFC 22, Frank Shamrock against Tito Ortiz.
Oh yeah.
That was 5-minute rounds with the scoring being 10-9 as far as who they were scoring the rounds for. And that's really where the start was. But the unified rule started at UFC 31.
Okay. Cool. I'll have to go back and watch that event. That's awesome. So tell me about the first meet, so to speak, to put these rules in play. Like, what was the was there a conference? Was there phone calls, emails to get these? Like, how are we going to put these rules? How are we going to decide this tiebreaker system that's in play? Like,
Well,
tell me about that.
you got to figure that at the time that all this is coming into play, there were no unified rules, and really it was promotions for the most part coming up with what they were going to use.
Mm-hmm.
You had different promotions all over the country, and some of them kind of big, some of them not too. The UFC was having problems at the time too, so they weren't a huge, powerful organization, but they were probably still the best and the most well known. You'd had fight promotions like Extreme Fighting Battlecade. They came out and they were the first ones that actually had the 5-minute round. They did that. John Peretti was the guy that put that into play for them since he was one of their guys. Then you had Mars, martial arts reality super fights was, you had all these different ones. Well, they all did what they wanted. They all did their own thing. They would go to a commission if they were looking to be under regulation. A lot of them were running from regulation, but you figure the UFC was running towards regulation long before what their story is now with Dana and everybody, because Dana didn't even come into play as being part of the UFC until UFC 30.
Right.
That was when the Fertittas, that was the first show that Zuffa put on. That was when the Fertittas bought it, made Dana the president, gave him 10% of the company. And I was first licensed as a referee back UFC 15. So that was because the UFC was running towards regulation, trying to get things regulated, trying to get under the commission so they could be put back onto cable because they were being pulled off of cable.
Right.
So what we would do is, as the UFC, it would be dependent upon, who was on the call, but Bob Meyerowitz was the owner. It was me. Art Davey, who was the guy who was the founder of the UFC, was actually the matchmaker up to a certain point. So early on, they had created the Ultimate Fighting Alliance, which was supposedly the governing group that actually covered the UFC. So it was us. Sometimes Jeff Blatnick we pulled Jeff Blatnick in to see what he would think about what we had come up with and stuff. But it was just us, deciding, all right, how are we going to do this? What should they be looking at? And then it was us going to those people that Art Davey was hiring as judges to decide who is going to be, the person sitting in the seat.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that either. See, this is great.
I don't know if it
All
is
right.
or not.
No. This is good because it connects a lot of dots.
Okay.
All right. So now, what I've learned so far through conversation is it is the tiebreaker system: damage slash impact, duration, dominance.
No,
Um, what is it then?
for the criteria for scoring of an MMA fight.
Yes.
All right. Look, the criteria that they're looking at is the UFC will normally put it out there. John Anik will kind of say it, and I've told him, hey, you got to say it this way.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about striking and grappling. All right.
Yes.
Striking
Okay.
and grappling are the criteria for judges in what they're looking at. If the fight is primarily striking, then that should weigh more. If the fight
Okay.
is primarily grappling, then that should weigh more. Okay. So
Okay.
striking
All
and
right.
grappling are your number one criteria. All right. We have striking, grappling. They're even as far as whatever it is, which one takes place more in the fight. That will be the one that the judge should gravitate to as having more effect in the fight. It was what took place more. Most of the time, it's striking because striking takes place more in the fight.
First. Yeah.
So that is their number one criteria, striking, grappling. Then you have, going off of that, you have aggression. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Aggression meaning you're the person that's trying to bring an end to the fight. You're the person pushing the pace of the fight. You're the person that is looking to be offensive in the fight. Not that
Okay.
you're the person that's going forward. It's that you're the person that is effectively using your aggression towards ending the fight or finishing the fight against your opponent. The last thing is cage control. And what most, this is what they don't get. The first two, striking and grappling, if you can decide as a judge who was the person that did better in this round based upon either striking or grappling or both, so if it was even, and you can say fighter A in the blue corner, they did better, you don't go to aggression and you don't go to cage control. You say fighter A gets that round, and if it was fairly close, not a big margin, and the other things that we'll talk about with damage and duration, it would be a 10-9 round.
Okay. All right. That makes sense because I had a lot of criticism towards the damage section, so to speak.
Okay.
Like,
And there is a breakdown for damage in it that is part of you saying who is doing better in those certain areas of striking
right.
or grappling.
Okay. All right. That makes then what I want actually does get scored then. Like I would always when going over the rules because it actually says above the damage duration, it actually talks about the effective striking slash grappling. But I figured that was within the damage duration and
That's
dominance.
part of a
It's
10-8
actually
round.
reversed. But it's actually reversed. It's actually all that damage duration within the striking and grappling then, correct?
Yeah. Anytime you see
Okay.
damage duration,
Uh-huh.
domination, damage, domination, or duration, you're talking about what is the criteria for a 10-8 round. Okay.
Okay.
We get regulators that mix
Mhm.
it up, but that is the criteria for a 10-8 round. Now, let me break it down for you. When it comes
Yeah.
to striking, okay, what the judges should be looking for are the first thing they're looking for is knockdowns.
Yep.
If you get knocked on your butt and it's a righteous knockdown, that's the most effective blow you're going to have from striking. That weighs very heavily with the judge. The next thing that they're going to look at coming down that list for striking would be heavy, effective blows. And when we say heavy, effective blows, that means that the judge is seeing that the blow has negatively affected the person that was struck by it, meaning their legs, they get wobbly leg. They don't go down, but they get wobbly leg and they go back. Or they see that, they get hit with a body shot and put their elbow down and start circling away real fast to get away from their opponent. It's a heavy, effective blow. That counts more than what we call volume strikes.
Okay.
Volume
Yep.
strikes are going to be, I sit there and I pepper you, boom, 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 and I hit you with 4 jabs. And you hit me with one right hand that wobbles me, and I step back.
Mm-hmm.
What's better, the 4 jabs or the one shot that was a heavy, effective blow? The judge,
It's like,
it's the one shot, the heavy, effective blow. The 4. This is where strike stats. When you look at the UFC or Bellator, and when they put up these strike stats, PFL puts up stats for everything.
yeah,
They don't mean a damn thing.
it's. I feel that way. It's kind of like a touchdown is worth more than 3 first downs. Like that's.
And it all comes down to, okay, it's hard to put it into play like it, but baseball, I could get a triple.
Yeah.
I don't get anything for it unless someone hits me in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you load the bases and then there's 3 outs. That's the offensive part of MMA. We don't score positions.
Mm-hmm.
We score effect from those positions. Did you damage your opponent? Okay, meaning you hit them with heavy elbows. That's damaging. That's effective striking. That's giving you this round. All right. Did you go after your opponent with grappling? Did you put them in fight-ending situations? Did you put them where you were looking for? You grab the Kimura, and all of a sudden they're having to roll out of it. If they're rolling out, hey, that's effective grappling. They're giving up a position that they don't want to give up based upon I have to do this, or this is getting too tight, and I'm going to end up having to either tap out or it's going to snap. That's effective grappling. That scores big with the judge. That should be what they're looking at. It's when, sometimes you'll get, fights where someone will take, the other person's back and they go to what we call a seatbelt, meaning I have one arm over the top, one arm, and I'm controlling, but control doesn't count. Position doesn't count. So if I get this great position and I have this control, the only way that I'm going to win the round off of that is the striking and grappling were completely even. The aggression was completely even. Now I win it off of cage control.
Okay. I was told previously that cage control isn't a thing. But all right, this is great. This really cleans it up. Because one of the things I used to have is like the criticism I had on damages. Like if I okay, scar tissue. Like I have a lot of scar tissue here. Let's say I took somebody down 3 times in a round and landed some ground and pound, but no visible damage. But if they hit me with one right hand or a jab and cut me, that's visible damage. Then that's more damage from like. So this makes a lot more sense. Makes a lot more sense.
When you have a cut, we just watched. I just watched the UFC on Saturday night. Yeah. Corey Sandhagen cut. Yadong Song, big time cut. Greg Rodriguez was cut. Yes, they got cut. And like when Chidi Njokuani landed that knee that hit Greg Rodriguez so hard, he gets big credit for that. It put it back. Again, did it knock him down? It didn't knock him down, so it didn't even do the heaviest thing we're looking for, but it was a heavy, damaging strike. Damaging, you can see that. But once that cut opens up, that's it. One blow. Judges are not giving credit because now it's bleeding again. They'll give credit if they see an effective strike that causes it to bleed again. Okay, well, there was another effective strike that landed, but blood should be considered. I used to tell people all the time, look, blood is colored sweat. Yeah, it happens. But it doesn't mean that someone who's bleeding is losing the fight. They could effectively be winning this fight, but they get cut, by something, be it legal or illegal at times. Sometimes it's a clash of heads. You don't give anything more than that one shot that you saw that caused that.
That makes a lot more sense. I'm happy that it is that way because I had a lot because then like that led me to believe that the discussion is what if like genetically speaking or scar tissue people just cut easier, but it's not like you said. It's not going to get rescored. It's not going to get rescored. So
it should never be rescored.
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, I don't. obviously everywhere, not just in judging or in life, there's room for improvement. There's room for discussion of
Totally.
change anywhere. Do you feel that there's change coming up or something that could be discussed? I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, I don't want people to see this and be like, Big John said. But do you feel that, I personally, I feel that the commissions have been more open, especially like the ABC, they're bringing fighters on board and stuff like that now. Do you think that something's coming?
I think the ABC is always looking, and look, there is, you've talked with Andy Foster. Andy
Mm-hmm.
Foster is the head of the rules committee for MMA with the ABC. He has his people underneath him that are his experts that get together and they'll converse upon different aspects of the sport, be it rules for the sport, be it criteria for judging.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, people, if you go back, the judging right now is so much better
Yes,
than
it
what it
definitely
was.
is. Mhm.
Is it perfect? It will never be perfect because it's human beings. And no matter what, Ryan, when you have a fight, I always say you have 50% of the people want the fighter in the blue corner, 50% of the people want the fighter in the red corner. And if
Mhm.
it's a close fight, their guy got robbed.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
Hmm.
a robbery. It's a close fight. And people need to start realizing, we don't do as a community, as a industry, we don't do the judges any favors, and especially some of the biggest promotions.
Hmm.
You take a look at the UFC, okay? And I'm not bagging on the UFC because I've talked to Mark Ratner about this and said, this.
Hmm.
Take a look at where they put their judges. He knows it, but there's nothing he can do about it. He has people above him, but two of their judges are sitting at the gates. Where are the most posts? Where are the most blocked views? At those gates. But
That's yeah.
you're putting your judge there, who is the most important person to see this fight, but you're putting your judge there
It's
because
funny.
my celebrity is more important. My celebrity.
It's funny you say that. I've been in the corner at these fights, and I've tried myself to move out of that area, and I'll bump into a judge. Like
Yep.
so. It's absolutely true. That's good. One of my questions was, what should people know? And I think that that's important. Like, the view is everything. Like people criticize the judges. They don't even know where they sit. First, I had to explain to somebody recently that the judges sit separately, that they don't even sit next to each other. One thing is the judges have gotten a lot better. I'm one of the fighters who don't think that you need to be a fighter to be a judge. I use the analogy
Sometimes it's
as
the worst.
sorry.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's the worst.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Mhm.
sometimes some fighters are so set in the way they did
They
something,
fight. Yeah.
they don't give credit for anything else.
Exactly. I know. I love seeing great double legs, so I know exactly what you mean. I'd be a horrible judge. I use the analogy that I had surgery. I had a plate put in my face. I didn't care if the surgeon suffered and experienced suffering that injury and recovering from it. I just wanted to know that he was qualified to fix me.
That's it.
And that's more or less how I feel with the judges. I wish the judges were a little bit more. I mean, they're getting better with being approachable, but whatever, it is what it is.
Well, and you got to. I'm going to side with the judges on this. It's not the
Okay.
judge. The judge wants to talk to you. The
Okay.
judge wants to tell you things. They're told by the athletic commissions, no interviews. Don't you go talking to people. If I see you on Twitter, if I catch you, you're done with me. I'm not going to use you anymore. They're kind of stuck.
Okay, then it's the commissions, the people we got to speak with on this. Like, I
Yes.
feel like social media, I get it. Get off social media. But, like, as you know, the weigh-ins rules meetings where we have a ref or a commissioner going over this stuff, I wish a judge would be there. Hey, listen, just kind of a briefer conversation of what we went over now. Just something. But if they're restricted, they're restricted. It's not on them. Plus, I know a lot of these judges too. They don't get paid a whole lot of money to be at these events. So it's like they got to take a PTO. I know I'm not taking PTO to get yelled at by some fighter that got screwed in Bumble, South Carolina for this big event, like, so, I mean, I guess I have my stinky opinions like everyone else,
Well,
but,
the opinion from most people is that the judges, they don't care. Trust me, they care.
mm-hmm.
They care an incredible amount, and the amount of time that they put into it, especially the top ones, the ones that you hear their names all the time, look, they're all on text groups together where they'll say, hey, watch this round. And they do. They all watch it. They all talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about getting it right. But another thing that people need to realize is when we talk about where those judges sit, they're not getting the view that we as the person watching on TV get. They get one view. It's one angle, and that really depends on the way the fighters are moving, where they're at, what they see, and it also depends on where that referee is. Many times you'll have the most telling or impactful moment in that round happen, and the judge says, "I didn't see that," and it's because referee's going in front of them just as that shot. They see something, but they didn't see, and you can't judge what you don't see. And it's a tough one. It makes it very difficult. That's why commissions are not, it's not that they sit there and worry so much about unanimous decision, split decision. They try to put those people in those three chairs, feeling that two of them will at least get the view to get the right person.
Okay.
Because you're not going to get the same. Each judge sees a different fight.
Okay. No, yes. John, this was great. Thank you so much. If there's anything else you'd like to add that you think people should know before criticizing or before watching fights?
All I can say is I totally understand why people criticize, and sometimes I criticize too. So I'm right there with them. Mm-hmm. But it is not something that is an easy job. I'm telling you right now. One of the most difficult things, especially when you have a fight that there's not a lot going on at times. It's hard to judge when nothing happens, and you're trying to come up with who's the person that's going to win this. It's important to the judges that they get it right.
It's kind of like judges could be a victim of their own success. One recent fight that makes me think of this is, Chito Vera versus Rob Font could have been a very easy fight to screw up, so to speak.
Yeah.
I thought the judges did an outstanding job, and nobody even bats an eye about it.
Okay, why?
Because
why did they do an outstanding job?
Why did they do an outstanding job?
Yeah.
Well, I felt that it showed control, but Rob in 3 of the 5 rounds or 4 of the 5 rounds showed control, but nothing really happened, just kind of showed control. But then in the last minute of 3 of those rounds, bam, Chito was really rocking him up, stumbling him, cutting him, I think he dropped him 2 of those rounds.
Absolutely.
But if you're going on the ratio of what you saw Mora, or I can't really say either, you could have easily swing that to Rob if
you're going to judge that fight off of punch stats, which is what all these promotions are putting up there. Rob Font wins that fight, but he doesn't win the fight. Look at the damage. Look at Rob Font after that fight. Look at the damage he took, and the heavy knockdowns that he went through. And the judges went through the exact criteria that they were supposed to go to say, this is Chito Vera's round. This is Chito Vera's round. And they did that continuously throughout the fight. And it was that Rob Font would win a lot of that, 3.5 minutes of the round. He would be doing the better work. And then Chito Vera would come on and hit him with heavy shots that damaged him, affected him. And so, he deserved that fight. And the judges did the right thing. But when the judges do the right thing, that's what we expect. They were supposed to. They were supposed to do that. So
it's can't please everybody. That fight's like the baseball game you talked about. Like if one team has 2 runs off of 10 hits, but another team has 5 runs off of 6 hits, that's a great piece right there. But all right, John, I know it's Sunday. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you.
Anytime in the future.
Great. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Bye-bye.